This is Peter J Wacks. You are listening to Primatech Files. Download the podcast, save the world.
Hey, Primatech peeps. Welcome back to the Primatech Files, a Southgate Media Group podcast dedicated to all things Heroes Prime and Heroes Reborn related things. I, of course, am Lilith, and joining me, as always, is the handsome, not to emasculate him.
It's me, Ricky.
Today, we have a special guest. It's another interview, and it is the author of the sixth and final book, A Long Way Home, Peter J Wacks. So we are going to let him tell you guys a little bit about himself, and then we're going to get to the meat and potatoes.
All right. Well, I will try and keep my introduction succinct, but I've had an odd and longer than it should have been, creative career that led towards me getting to write for Heroes. I actually started in acting as a child actor when I was about 6 years old. I was a speaking extra in the movie Revenge of the Nerds, and then I went on to another movie, Thunder Alley, which is this like 80s rock band movie, where again I was a small extra. But being an actor and the set hours were very, very long, so I kind of talked to my mom about switching what I wanted to do, and I started telling her stories and writing stories myself. It was first professionally published in high school, and it was very pump up the volume and angsty because there were a core of us that were published writing science fiction satire of our school administration, and the few kids that got caught actually got expelled.
Ooh.
It was pretty crazy. But from there, I went into game design. I designed Cyberpunk, the collectible card game. I went back. I was a game consultant in Hollywood for a little while. Like the TV show Alias, I kind of went in there and proposed and worked with them for about a month to see whether or not a game would be viable for it. Random stuff like that. Had all sorts of creative adventures. Went off, wrote a comic. Was nominated for Bram Stoker for the comic, but eventually, 2 decades later, I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? When I was 6, I decided I wanted to write books, and I've done everything but write a book now. So so I started writing, and I started writing novels specifically instead of short stories and game story arcs and stuff like that. And it's just, I haven't looked back since I did that in 2008. It's just been going strong. I have 4 titles out now, 3 media tie-ins, and I have 7 more books that are all on various stages of contract and going to be coming out over the next 2 years.
Oh, a quick follow-up question. Sorry, Ricky. How did you meet Kevin?
So Kevin actually lives about 45 minutes from me, and I was tooling around the Colorado conventions as a small fry indie author, and I was working really hard to kind of organize the other indies around me and get us all working together. That way we could present a more professional face and something with more creative pull and more creative power to the conventions and to the fans around Colorado. And Kevin, attending a couple of his local shows, saw that in me, and he and I just kind of started talking. And then I had some really rough times dealing with industry politics around the award that I was nominated for. And Kevin was just this invaluable advisor during that time. And, he's been through those troubles because what hasn't the man gone through? He's got this amazing 25-year, 130-book career, and he went from advisor to mentor, and then he decided he wanted to build the press, Wordfire Press. So I started working with him on that and kind of using those same ideas I had for community sculpting to help him design the press. And then we tried writing together, and it was really great. There was this little story, Change of Mind, that was in Fiction River that we wrote together, and we realized, wow, we have really complementary styles and we really enjoy writing together. And he has since become like one of the most valued, awesome, amazing, closest people in my life.
I did want to say one thing. We've been trying to get this interview for a long time. Like we've pretty much done this since we've had this interview in the bag since the books first were announced, or like they started to announce who was writing them. And I got in touch with you pretty much straight away, and we kind of had that back and forth. And eventually it was like, do you want to come on the podcast when it's coming out? And you were like, straight away, yes. I put that out on Twitter, and as soon as that went out, some people got in touch with us from House Petrelli, and they basically got us more interviews. So without you, without you, we wouldn't have had as many interviews as, we have. So thank you personally for that. So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's
Um,
finally great to finally speak to you. Yeah.
yeah, it is fantastic. And yeah, it was like 3 days after San Diego that I got that first message from you. And I was just like, I got involved with Heroes and with Kevin on it because when he opened that door for me, his first words were, I know you've talked about Heroes before. This is like one of the big ones that you really love, right? And of course I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm a nut about Heroes. And so yeah, when you reached out to me from Fan Group, I was just like, well, heck yeah, you're my people. Absolutely. I'd love to hang with you.
So you talk about always like liking Heroes from like being a Heroes fan. Was it because we asked this quite a lot, and was it all the way through, or was it season one and a bit of season two? So
Man, you have no idea how carefully I tap dance around that question when I'm on panels. And I'll call it out. I'll call it out sometimes to the audience, and I'll be like, okay, show of hands, how many people loved the first season and a half, and then kind of liked the rest of it? And unfortunately, a lot of people do. I will say that I loved the series all the way through, even down to the carnival. I was kind of like, I don't know what they're doing, but yeah, sure, let's run with this and see where they go, Um, but even with the carnival, while I was kind of like a little mystified as to why that story arc was there, that culmination, that moment where it
yeah,
all led up and every single thread led to Claire throwing herself off the Ferris wheel, I was like, oh my God, yes, awesome. So yes, of course, I'm a normal Heroes fan. I absolutely loved the first season and a half. I
Hmm.
still really, really liked and religiously watched the rest of it.
Did you follow any of the extra media that was around back then? The graphic novels, the ARG games, or the iStories as well.
I didn't, not for lack of wanting to. I have a few of the comics that I never managed to read, stuff like that. But when I started writing, I had to make a very, very kind of line in the sand choice. At the time, I read a lot of comics, I played a lot of video games, and and I noticed that I could get like maybe 500, 1,000 words tops done in a day if I was doing those things because your creativity goes in so many different directions that when you trim that tree of creativity too much by engaging in too many different activities, it starts to affect that core thing that you want to push forward. And and so I stopped reading the comics as much. I stopped playing games as much, and I started being able to write a lot more. So it was a sacrifice that was good to make. And nowadays, when I'm writing, I'm really good at multitasking. So I can just have the TV going in the background, and I can still actually get words on the page and chapters written while watching something.
Let's go back to the beginning with you. So you've told us you've acted, you've written for games, books, graphic novels, all the lot. Which is your favorite medium to kind of work in?
I'm going to take the cop out answer. Obviously, I write books because I enjoy developing and creating the books, but I, above all, I love stories unfolding, and I love all the different formats in which a story can unfold. Uh, Getting to participate in that journey, whether as a creator or as a reader or follower or player, just that journey is to me what's most important. I love, part of my process is sitting down and hammering out a bunch of story beats and then figuring out, okay, I've got this awesome story. Which medium is actually going to be best
Oh,
for
yeah.
telling this story? Do I want to look at developing a comic? Do I want to look at writing a novel? Am I going to make a series of short stories? Should I talk to my friends in LA? Is this potentially something that we should do a treatment on? Like, it's not. It's not about the medium. It's about the story.
Well, is there a medium that comes easiest for you, maybe?
Novels are pretty easy for me, um, but right now that's because what my hand is in the most. I would love to say that there is one that it's just like, yeah, I sit down and not, but there isn't. It took a lot of hard work and study to develop my skill set with each medium. Luckily, the study was and the work was a lot of fun because I do love the story so much. So yeah, I can say that drawing is harder than any of the other mediums because I put less practice and less time into it. But other than that, I mean, any storyteller, any person out there, any of your listeners that are keyed towards building a creative career, they shouldn't be scared or feel like they're natural at one particular uh, medium, and that they should follow that. They should follow wherever the
Mm.
story takes them. They should follow that direction, and they should learn everything they can. The learning scripts and understanding the difference between a script and a book helped me write better novels, even though I was learning scripts. And it's like that across the different mediums. So yeah.
That's fair enough. No, cool. So you mentioned that Kevin came to you and asked you about Heroes. Is that how did that actually lead for you to be coming involved in writing the book? Did they approached him and he came to you, or can you give us some background into that?
Yeah, it totally was. He opened that door for me. I can't claim it any other way. um, he really has a lot on his plate right now, with Navigators of Dune, the next Saga of the Seven Sons book. There's a couple other big projects that haven't been announced yet. He's going through like 16-hour days right now. And when Heroes came on, he also is a fan of Heroes, so he gladly hopped on it, and he started to look at his timetable, and he was just like, "Oh God, I can do this, and I can do it well, but I can't make it great with the time that I have. How am I going to deal with this?" And that was when he kind of brainstormed with me, and he said, "All right, let's package your resume up. I need the full, impressive, sounds like you're bragging resume that you don't normally use, because this is NBC, and I'm not sure they're going to say yes to you signing on." Well, Basti and Kevin and all the people involved in the project have been spectacular. They fast tracked the approval for me to join the project. It took them like 12 hours once we got my full bio over to them for them to turn it around and say, yes, let's get moving on this. It's been a spectacular, amazing experience. But it is because Kevin said, I want Peter in on this, that I got in on it.
That's awesome. How long was the development to actually finishing, or at least getting a first draft on? How long was that time for you?
It was pretty brutal. 4 or 5 months. The outline process went back and forth through several different iterations of the outline. We really, now that you've read Long Way from Home, hopefully it came out that what I was trying to do and what Kevin was creating a framework for me to play in, was to recreate that season one feel, where we've got really ordinary people who are just overwhelmed and trying to deal with something that's so much bigger than them. And that took a lot of back and forth to make sure that we were hitting the points right. And then there's little Easter eggs inside there that you guys may have spotted that I'm not going to go too far into. Spoilers, right? Where I had to coordinate with like Keith DeCandido, and I asked Tim Zahn a couple questions. Trying to kind of get some feel for what other people were doing with theirs, as well as working with the studio. That process was really long, to go from outline, and then what Kevin did was, in the middle of that process, before we even actually had final approval on the outline, he did something absolutely amazing for me to help me as his co-author, which is he went up to Camp Hale, where the piece takes place, and he camped there for, oh gosh, like 3-4 days, and he wandered around and wrote a first draft of, it was an outdated outline that we were already past, but he still actually got that first draft down, so that when it was time for me to create the first draft off of the final approval, I was just chiseling on stuff instead of writing from scratch.
Yeah, you mentioned Easter eggs. There is one in there that I was kind of wondering about, because I remember you sent us a picture with you, Peter, and Keith at one point, and there's a line or two in there that are very similar. We've talked about it already, but I won't say it here. People might pick it up when they listen to our review of the book. So yeah, I really like.
That was a direct tip of the hat over to Keith. Keith shot me over his actual full piece on Save the Cheerleader, Destroy the World, and so I got to read through that, and I picked up since we hadn't seen the actors on screen yet, we had just seen the various iterations of script. Like, we really had to kind of work together to kind of find those voices. And I'm pretty sure that what you're talking about is where I inserted voice that Keith established.
Definitely, yeah. That was really cool. Yeah. What was the spec that they originally gave you, and or did they give you free reign and then just back and forth until it came down to something?
No, well, if we had had free reign, I would have been begging to write Hero. I love Hero and Ando. What it was more along the lines of was when I stepped into it, the idea was we need to see kind of what happened before Sunstone and what ideas did we have that would actually expand the universe and build something new into that socket. So we were kind of given a rough space to work in and then told, go wild, make something original, and we'll just work with you to make sure it fits everything.
That's cool. I think I really enjoyed your book because of the fact that it was essentially from an original, mainly original characters the whole way through, which I really enjoyed because it didn't feel like you had any, not constraints, but you didn't have, like you had some voices. Yeah, you had some voices that you had, but they were brand new, whereas some others had, some more established characters, which I think, a lot of people, have their thoughts on what they think that like certain characters will say. But I really enjoyed your original characters. How did you come up with the original powers for them? Because that was the most interesting thing that I really enjoyed.
Well, I guess it depends on which powers. Kevin and I basically started charting out powers, and each of us suggested powers back and forth. And without giving too much about Long Way From Home away, as you saw in it, there are a lot of powers that are not key to the plot progression, and then there's one power that is key. The key power was I basically kind of wanted to take that theme that we were working within, and I'm actually the one that pitched and proposed that power. I wanted to find a Peter Petrelli or a Siler level power that seemed innocuous to begin with until you see the full depth of what it could do, but that had nothing to do with other people's powers. So that's kind of where that one came from. I had to really kind of think it through, think about what I needed out of the power. And then the rest of them were just, we were springboarding like, what are all the powers that we never get to see because they're almost a curse, because you have a power, but it's so bad of a power that you don't want to admit you have it.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it as well, because, a lot of the times we get in Heroes, people with kind of really cool powers, and it's like, there's always going to be that kind of, for lack of a better word, that schmuck who has that kind of, I can heat water to room temperature kind of thing, which they mention in Dark Matters, which I've always wanted to have like that kind of an episode of just like that. Kind of like the Zeppo from Buffy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
But there is another power that I was really interested in, and I won't say obviously what the power is, but I also liked the power of Alexa because of the way that it seems very strong, but the way that she uses it kind of people don't think it's that much, and I really enjoyed that aspect. So yeah,
Alexa, yes, and that was Kevin's. That was Sam was me, and Kevin was Alexa. And he actually designed a foil originally between Alexa and Liana. Getting to play with that and draw that out was so much fun.
And that's a very big theme in Heroes, the kind of duality of powers as well, and characters. So yeah, I really like that aspect. Can you let us in on any powers that were kind of left on the cutting room floor, so to speak?
There was a much more sexualized version of one of the powers that is already kind of... hot and heady, that we just went, yeah, you know what, there are kids that watch Heroes too. So we're going to leave that power behind. So far as the kind of useless, the misfit powers are concerned, I mean, there were dozens. There were things like, you can alter a radio signal within 20 feet. Okay, no, we don't really need to use that. We really did kind of have to key in on which powers we wanted to use based on that central theme and on what I could build the con job portion of it with. resonator guy was the resonation power, the ability
Yeah.
to use voice, but only voice through touch, actually started much weaker, but became much more powerful based on need. So, a lot of what ended up on the cutting room floor was a discarded version of what we ended up using in the long run, just a stronger or weaker version.
Well, you said that you liked Hero and Ando. Are those your two favorite characters of
Oh,
Heroes Prime?
absolutely. The eternal optimism of Hero, and the yata, this is a 8-year-old boy who just got his wish, and he knows at his center exactly what he's supposed to do with it, and it's the right choice. It's not about him, it's about everyone else.
Definitely. I think that's why a lot of people gravitated towards Hero as well, because a lot of the show was like, oh, I have powers, it's bad for me, whereas he's just like, no, what are you talking about? I can time travel. Come on, guys. So yeah, I think that was a great part of him. But
No, absolutely, I'm with you. That is exactly how I see him.
have you had a chance to watch Heroes Reborn, and what do you think of it if you have?
Okay, I've been traveling for the last over a month, so I'm only caught up to, what is it, episode 6 roughly? And so I'm a couple episodes behind. I have everything TiVo'd. The biggest shock for me is that when you see it on screen, it's not the same as the final script revisions.
Yeah.
They may shuffle some scenes around a little bit. There are little things here and there, and you actually get to see whether or not you got people right. And it's been really amazing to see it unfold. But I have the 7 of us that did those 6 books, I think, have a unique perspective on it because we read the scripts ahead of time, because we knew what was coming. So it's not about where it's headed. It's about seeing each moment for itself. Insofar as whether I like it in comparison to, I think it's a good first half of season 2 equivalency, so far as where Reborn is.
But you're only at episode 6, and it really gets going in the next.
So much better.
So much better in the next couple of episodes. So you have that to look forward to.
Exactly, and I am looking forward to it. I know what's coming. I haven't seen it on screen.
Oh, see, some people are lucky to get that. How much of the scripts did you get beforehand? And obviously you can't tell us much, but like,
we got scripts 1 through 10 or 11, and then we got the prequel episode script. The Hero Truther webisode.
I really did enjoy your book. I thought it was one of the better ones. I like them all because I'm a Heroes fan, but yours was like the best read for me. And I think it's the original characters and the aspects from that, which kind of like, and especially developing the world. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. I worked really hours and hours and hours. You would be surprised if you found out just how many. I would probably be surprised if I actually added up how much I put into that thing. But I wanted to get it just right, because it's the worst letdown when you're a fan of something, and a writer comes in and just doesn't love the world as much as you. So
I think you did it justice. I really did enjoy it, and I think, you saying that you liked Heroes all the way through kind of makes it, it makes the story that much better, because you handled the kind of context and the content with care and stuff, because you didn't want to let anyone down, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a big concern all the way through, and it was a huge thing for me also that Kevin was willing to say, you know what, I'm trusting you on this because I know that you are going to handle it with care. So I also didn't want to let that down, because, Kevin has such an amazing reputation working with media tie-ins in other people's worlds.
Peter, do you have anything that you'd like to shout out, like your Twitter, website, any upcoming projects that we can be on the lookout for?
Or conventions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to be at Magic City Comic-Con in Florida in January. You can find my Twitter at Peter J Wacks. It's Wacks. You can search my name, Peter J Wacks, on Facebook, find my Facebook page. Keep an eye out. There's actually a bunch of different projects of mine that are coming out this year. I've got a superhero thing and a new epic fantasy, all sorts of fun stuff that's on the way out. And I guess the last thing that I would shout out is to remind everybody once again, download the podcast, save the world.